Joining us right now, the president of baseball operations and general manager for the Padres, AJ Preller. Good morning, AJ. Got him? I know you had him a second ago, Paulie.
Oh,
AJ, can you hear us?
Guys. There he goes.
There we go. Good morning.
Hi, buddy.
We got you. Let me start just by saying, record-wise, I'm very happy with where the Padres are right now. As a fan, I'm usually the one who doesn't worry so much, but why am I so concerned when I watch this team and I continue to see, the Stars struggle offensively? And when you're watching, what's your perspective right now on the offensive struggles for Fernando and Manny and Jackson Merrill to a certain extent? And what's it going to take to get these guys going at the plate?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think, you look at our team and, I think on the positive side is that we've found a way to win a lot of baseball games, and we're, sitting there, near or at the top of the standing for most of the first 40 games, which is kind of the quarter point, and a lot of guys contributing, obviously a lot of big swings late in games. And, at the same point in time, we all know that, overall over the course of 162, we know what kind of the standards are and what you need to get to as a group. And, and we haven't swung the bat the way we need to. And our offense overall, if we're going to be there at the end of the season and not just after 40 games, I think, everybody in the building, everybody on the team will tell you, yeah, we're capable of more. So, I think the part I think that, I think we all understand is that, there's a lot of belief in Manny and Fernando and, Xander and Jackson and that group, that they've won a lot of games. They've gotten us in the playoffs multiple times. They'll be the first to tell you they've got to be better, and they understand that. And, again, you look at the track record of those guys and also the want to, I think sometimes you see Manny, you see how easy he plays the game and how well he's played the game over his career. And I think all of this just comes easy to him. Like he works really hard for it, and he's down there grinding every day, trying to figure out, why he hasn't had the first 40 games that he's capable of. The positive, like you were mentioning, is that we've done this and we haven't seen what those guys at their best, and we know that's coming. So, that's the focus every day for us, is trying to figure out like how we get there as a group and how to help those guys individually, but a lot of belief that those guys are going to get there for us. So.
AJ Preller joins us here on Ben and Woods this morning. AJ, I hear this all the time talking to coaches and hitting coaches and all kinds of people around the game. Hey, listen, process over results, right? The process works, the results will come. Are you confident in the process right now?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we've all been part of things where you look up, and if you're doing things the right way, you're going about it the right way from a work standpoint, a preparation standpoint, a mindset standpoint, review. I think that's obviously very important when you have talented players, which we do. But I think we're also realistic that over the last 40 games, it's not a 10-game sample size like we were talking earlier in the year, of 40 games. You want to see those the good process results and that turn into real results. And if not, that's the questions we're asking every day. Is there something we can tweak? Is there something we can do a little bit differently? Is there something from a mechanics preparation standpoint? But we've got a good group. We've got a good, from Craig's standpoint, he's been in it as a player. He knows what it takes and what it looks like. He understands 162, how that plays out and works. And the same thing with the hitting team. So, again, like we're constantly looking to tweak it. We're constantly looking to see, hey, what can we do a little bit better? And when you're not getting those results, you've got to go back to the process and kind of say, hey, is there a way we can do this a little bit differently or a little bit better? And that's where we're at right now.
But without panicking, right? Like that's the thing is if something doesn't go well for 10 games, because you see Cubs ripped off 10 games in a row, and then they lost 5 and got like 4 hits in those games. So how do you balance the line of, we need to make some changes, but we cannot panic and change everything we're doing right now? That's got to be a tough gig for you, the players, the coaches, all of it.
I think that's all part of that balance and rhythm of 162, and it's also part of the experiences. I think like the fact that I think the best coaches, managers, scouts, players, they can navigate the ups and downs of a baseball season and how a team can look really good in a series or a week and really bad in a series and week. But I think understanding that, that over the course of the season, what good looks like and what excellence looks like, I think that's that's the whole key. So, we've got players that, they understand that they want to win, they want to do really well. And ultimately, I think from our standpoint, you can't get emotional about it. You just kind of look and go, okay, if it's not working, what isn't working? What do we want to try to tackle for this week and for the next 10 days, and go tackle that. And a lot of faith that we have smart people that are, have a good sense of what needs to be done, and, and talented players that can go ahead and make a change and an adjustment to do it.
AJ Preller with us on our SDCCU management report. And AJ, I fully know that I might not get a completely honest answer here, but what's the plan for a little length out of the bullpen tonight after the short start by Griffin Canning yesterday, and the possible addition of Lucas Giolito this weekend to the starting rotation?
Yeah, and things are always tied together. I think every day we talk about our roster and what's the best way to get to navigate, that game or that series. So we made a decision a few days ago, and we felt like, every night, Ruben, myself, Josh, Stein, Craig will sit down and talk, then Fritz, about kind of where we're at, especially on the pitching side. And, ultimately over the last few days, we felt like we had a lot of, we had coverage and, from to play all different style games, if we're down, if we're up, et cetera. Obviously, Giolito coming back is going to lead to a roster move here this weekend, and we'll be ready in terms of making that move. And again, we have some different options. The tough part is there are a lot of guys that are performing well in our bullpen that we've got to talk about, and but ultimately that's part of the deal is looking up every day and, hey, we're going to get a pitcher back, and we've got to go ahead and make a roster move. We'll do that here over the course of the next few hours, honestly. So.
All right, AJ, I don't know if you saw on Twitter. I don't know. Yeah, you may be on Twitter. You may not. It's always been a big mystery. Ben was playing a little game of true or false with his Twitter audience. And I was going to see if you would play with us this morning. So I'll ask you a question, true or false. The organization feels that Ethan Salas could handle a big league pitching staff today.
Yeah, I think
because that's what I've heard. That's not just speculation, having fun. I've literally talked to people like, oh no, he could slide in today and handle the staff defensively and call a game and all that.
Yeah, I think the great part with Ethan, is he's had a really good start to the season. So I think everything that we've all seen from him. Yep. In terms of, super talented player that can handle a pitching staff, defend the position, swing the bat well. He's wired the right way. He wants to be really good. He asks the right questions, all those things, we've seen with results, which is fun when all that comes together. I think, you start seeing the prospect rankings, and now he's miraculously a month later, he's now towards the top of the prospect rankings.
He went up,
so I think we all kind of take it with a grain of salt, but
he went up 85 spots on one. 85 spots. He shot up 85 spots on one of them.
Yeah. So, again, he's still a minor league player. He's still developing.
Okay.
Our minor league group is, talked about it yesterday. He's got still a lot of things that he's got to do and check his box on in terms of the development card, but he's got that type of ability that, one day, down the road is going to be able to help lead us.
So not this weekend. So it's true or false? He'll be up this weekend.
No,
false.
Ethan's
Okay.
got, yeah, Ethan's got some work to do.
Okay. All right.
So
good to know.
You said that. I'm curious about this though. You say check those boxes in the minor leagues. Obviously he's starting to hit now. We've seen you aggressively promote Fernando Tatis Jr. and Jackson Merrill as young players early in the season, even moving Jackson into a different position when he did it. How do you know when it's right, when the time is right to bring a guy up versus let him have some confidence and success in the minor leagues?
Yeah, again, I think those guys, they were very special players, and we have our the way we go about doing it in terms of checking a lot of boxes from our staff, performance metrics, basically our development checklist that we look at, and we're not scared to challenge players. We talk about accelerating the progress of the gifted, and usually the best guys respond to that. But we've got a bunch of questions in on our player plans that we look at. And when guys get to a certain point, we don't always sit there and say, hey, your birthday is not one of them, in terms of what we're looking for. So, again, Ethan is part of that process. Like we've had a lot of guys, have done that before. And, when he gets to that point, we'll look at potentially promoting him, but he's not at that spot right now.
Talking to AJ Preller here, president of baseball ops here on Ben and Woods this morning. And, the pitching has really done an admirable job this year. AJ, a bit cobbled together at times. You've seen some good starts out of most of the guys in the rotation, all of them at one point. But what's the update on Nicky P and Joe Musgrove? Obviously, two guys we love, two fierce competitors. The offense remains an issue, but let's talk about the guys. When can we expect those guys back, or at least to hear something about how they're progressing?
Yeah, I mean, I know everybody's anxious, and I know, everybody, and especially myself, want these guys, back on the mound. But we also understand that, they're working through their rehab, portion of it. I think with Joe and Nick, they haven't started throwing yet. So, I think Joe, both players, wasn't with them here this week, but from our, Scott Hacker and our rehab group, they had really positive last week, 10 days, started to feel, feeling in a good place. I think that starts moving the needle on them throwing. But, when they start playing catch, they'll have a build up, that'll take some time, and then they'll start getting into bullpens and then eventually games. So, we're not talking about days or weeks with those guys in terms of them being ready to come back to Petco. It's going to be a process. And I think the biggest thing for us is, again, these are not black and white. These, it's not black and white in terms of the medical process on where these guys are at. So, it's kind of an individual basis. And, we've made the decision that, with both of those guys that, until they're, probably being more conservative, feeling like, hey, more time is better than less. It's a long season. And, if we're getting them back pitching meaningful games, down the road, if that's, June, July, we're comfortable with that. So that's kind of the way we've gone about it, from the advice of our medical team, and also just looking at the long season and what it all looks like for us. And, it sounds like those guys have had good work and some positive signs in the last, in the last week to 10 days. And I know everybody wants to hear, they're in a rehab in Lake Elsinore, tomorrow, but it's going to take some time for them to get back there. And that doesn't mean that that's not happening. I've seen speculation of that those guys or Joe is not going to be back this year. That's not the case at all. It's just to take some time, and we're being conservative, making sure those guys feel good and they check every box when they come back.
That's great to hear.
All right, last thing for me, AJ, and I don't know if you're traveling or where you've been this week, but what is your reaction when Sunday Nick Castellanos hits the home run, 2 outs in the 9th inning, and then Wednesday when Gavin Sheets does it with 2 outs in the 9th inning? Is it a fist pump? I mean, what do you do when your team does something spectacular like that?
Yeah, I was on the road both times, and it's not trying to, both times I was the first time I was in an airport and getting the streaming in and out on this MLB app that was driving me crazy. And so I kind of lost it there in terms of the connection. And all of a sudden you get the update flashing, and you're either expecting
final score,
hey, final score, so you're just dreading that final score. And all of a sudden you get as I'm passing through security, and I'm high-fiving the guy next to me, basically, and you get the Castellanos, home run, update. Yeah. And you're trying to stream to get back on to watch, and you can't see it. That in-play run is the greatest feeling ever. And then a couple days later, I was at my nephew's graduation, and we had it going, and it was streaming. But again, the update came before the swing, which is painful when it's an out, but always great when you see the update. So I think when John Smith graduated, there was a huge cheer from one section. So after Gavin had hit that home run, so yeah, that was that.
Couple of good moments. Definitely need some more in Seattle. They got some tough customers there on the bump for sure.
Yeah, any in-play runs would be fantastic this weekend.
Yeah, no doubt.
Huge fan of it. So yeah, it's going to be, again, it's the big league. So not it's kind of tired when you hear these guys are. Everybody's good. That Mariner stuff is really good, so it's going to be a challenge. But again, we're looking to get back to October. We've got to got to go on that in-play runs button here this week.
No doubt.
So
yeah, tell Craig to just lean on it this weekend. I mean, it's just push the button, man. Get the slug button going and the home run button going, and we'll see what happens. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.